Skink, No Surrender by Hiaasen. Chapter 13. A radio was playing, country western music, which was not Mally's favorite. Nobody was visible on deck. As we drew closer, I called her name. From the corner of my eye, I saw the garman pick up his rifle. The houseboat was battered and grimy, the paint bleached flat by the sun. Once upon a time, the boat had had a name, but the lettering on the transom had faded. The hull looked nicked and gouged. Bolted to the stern was a big outboard engine that was probably older than me. Part of the Evinrude decal had peeled off so that only the Rude was left. Laid out on the side rails were my cousin's yellow swimsuit, some t-shirts, 4 white socks, a men's pair of blue jeans, and the gray hoodie that Mally had been wearing the night her mother dropped her at the Orlando airport. I remembered the hoodie from the security video that Detective Trullo had showed me. The houseboat's windows were open, but they'd been covered from the inside with bed sheets. Maybe the sheets were meant to keep out mosquitoes, or maybe they were put there to prevent anyone from seeing inside. Nickel eased the garfish barge alongside. He tied off with a greasy-looking rope. Balancing on the gunwale, he jabbed the barrel of his .22 through one of the houseboat's windows and pulled down the sheet. He took a long look inside before announcing, "Ain't nobody home." In a way, I was relieved. My fear was finding Mally tied up and gagged. "What kind of trouble you think your cousin's got into?" the garman asked. "I'm not sure yet." My guess was that online Talbot had taken Mally ashore to find something to eat. It was only a short swim. He'd probably left the music playing to make people think the boat was occupied so they wouldn't try to sneak on board and swipe anything. "Those her clothes hung up to dry?" Nichols said. "Some of them, yeah." "Then she ain't dead, is my thought. They'll be back." "I'll wait." Nervously, I climbed aboard. It must have been a pitiful sight, me and my 9-iron, because Nichols said, "You sure about this, boy?" "Definitely." I wasn't going back without Mally. No way. I flicked the 18-button rattle hanging from my neck and said, "It's my good luck charm." "Didn't help that snake too much, did it?" Thanks, I thought, for the vote of confidence. "Look, I can't stay and watch over you." "No problem," I told him. "We made a deal. You did your part." "They's a man in Bonifay gonna pay me $200 for these fish, maybe 210. He grinds 'em up to fertilize his watermelon patches, 80 acres total, but he don't like to wait." He glanced down at his .22, and for a second I thought he might offer it to me. If he had, I would have said no thanks. The only thing I've ever aimed a rifle at was a Dr. Pepper can, and it took me 5 tries to put a hole through it. I was target shooting out near the landfill with Mitch, a friend of mine who was in 10th grade. He's a serious hunter. My brothers and I never owned any guns. Mom and Dad didn't like them. "Money," said the garman. He seemed to be in a hurry. "Just before you reach the bridge, there's a boat ramp." "I know which one." 10 steps from the ramp is an old tupelo tree. That's where my grandfather's shoebox is buried. "'Perciate it. You take care." Nickel untied the barge, and it slowly drifted away from the houseboat. He gave a slight nod before chugging upriver. The flies went with him, but the stink lingered like a fog. I got out of sight pretty quick. The inside of the cabin was musty and hot. First thing I did was rehang the sheet that Nickel had yanked down. Small holes along one edge aligned with the row of nails that somebody had hammered into the window frame. In one corner of the cabin was a portable camp stove. In another sat a scuffed gray suitcase that most likely belonged to the fake Talbot chalk. The suitcase was locked, so I left it be. On the floor was a pile of ruffled blankets along with Mally's red travel bag. I found her laptop, which was broken. Worse than broken, actually. It looked like somebody had stomped on it. No wonder my cousin hadn't been sending emails. My plan was to hide as soon as I spotted Mally and the bogus Talbot chalk returning through the woods. There was a hatch up in the cabin floor that held a spare anchor, a rusty fire extinguisher, and some mildew-covered life vests. I crawled inside to make sure there was enough space for me and my backpack. No problem once I chased off the spiders. After stowing my stuff, I propped open the lid of the hatch for easy access. Then I took a seat behind the console. Most of the gauges were cracked from old age and weather. Leaning against a cockeyed compass was a portable clock radio that was playing a song about hard times and lost romance. I wanted to change the channel, but online Talbot would know something was wrong if he heard rock or hip-hop blasting from the boat. One thing I didn't factor into my situation was exhaustion. The night before I hadn't slept for even 5 minutes. The rain was too noisy, flopping like BBs against the shower cap. Plus, I couldn't stop thinking about the governor chasing a gator through the dark waters of the Choctawhatchee. Now, in the muggy stillness, full of sad guitar tunes, my eyelids grew heavy. I tried cranking up the volume, which rousted me for a while, but eventually I ended up in the middle of a dream that made no sense. It was me, Trent, and my father playing golf on a beach. The two of them were getting along just fine. Mom wasn't there, so it wasn't like she had to make a choice. The sand was whiter than the sand on Loggerhead Beach, and the dunes were taller. We had to be careful where we hit our shots because there were fresh turtle nests everywhere, and from each mound poked a single striped soda straw. Trent snap-hooked a fire iron into the surf, and all three of us waded in to search for his ball. My toes brushed against something hard and smooth, but when I dove underwater, the only object was way bigger than a golf ball. It was a sunken car, a white Toyota Camry with a pellet-sized hole in the rear window. I yelled for my father to come see, but nothing came out of my mouth except bubbles. I woke up with my forehead resting on the steering wheel of the houseboat. Some people were talking, and they weren't part of the dream. Peeking out the cabin door, I saw only birds and butterflies in the trees along the bank. I crept to the window and moved a sheet slightly so I was able to take a look downriver. 2 figures were approaching in a small boat. At first I thought it was a kayak, but as they drew closer, I saw it was a canoe. The canoe. The one and only that the gator had carried off. There was no doubt in my mind. Mally sat in the bow. Phony Talbot was paddling in the back. I recognized his blue Rays cap and the mirrored Oakleys from the airport video. He didn't look like a huge guy, though. I couldn't be sure from a distance. Mally was in a typical Mally slouch. She was wearing some floppy Australian-type bush hat and pink bracelets on each wrist. Not her usual style, but I was totally amped just to see her alive out in the open. Yet what about the canoe? The sight of it hardened my sad suspicion that Skink was dead. If he wasn't, he would be the one with Mally, and online Talbot would be the one in the river. Whatever conversation my cousin and her kidnapper had been having ended abruptly. In silence, they were coming straight toward the houseboat. I grabbed the 9-iron and lay down in the hatch. When I lowered the heavy cover, my arms were basically pinned to my body. The hatch wasn't much wider than a coffin. The darkness and the stale heat were smothering. Every breath I took sounded like a huff of a locomotive. Every heartbeat was like a thunderclap. The air was an acrid mix of mold and gas fumes. I've never been claustrophobic, but I knew I couldn't stay there. One of the anchor prongs was digging into my butt, and the nozzle from the fire extinguisher was poking me in the neck. Some sort of insect, possibly a cockroach, casually crawled across my eyebrows, but I couldn't even reach up to brush it away. In a panic, I kneed open the hatch cover, scrambled out, and ducked into the boat's head. Basically, a small closet built around a mini toilet. Didn't smell like a spring garden, but I sat down and shut the door. It wouldn't lock because the latch had been pried off. There was a sharp clack when the aluminum canoe nosed against the houseboat, followed by the muted thumps as my cousin and online Talbot stepped aboard. The two of them entered the cabin, the deck squeaking as they walked. Somebody turned off the radio. "Light the stove," it was a male's voice. "I'm not hungry." "You're never hungry." "I won't eat catfish," Mally said. "They're so gross." "Give me your hand." "No." "Give it here." "No." I heard a brief scuffle and then a click. "You're such an ass," Mally snapped. The fake Talbot called her the B word. "I'll go clean the fish," he said, "but first I got to take a whiz." "Oh, nice." "Don't go anywhere." Ha ha. Trapped on the toilet, I didn't have any brilliant ideas. The guy needed to relieve himself, and the boat had only one place to do that. I reached for the doorknob and held on. With the other hand, I started shaking the rattle on my neck. A real rattlesnake can vibrate its tail more than 50 times per second, way faster than a human finger muscles can move. I must have been trembling like crazy because the 18 buttons on the rattle started making some noise, enough to freak out the Talbot imposter. He let go of the doorknob and yelled, "Whoa! You hear that?" "What is it?" Mally asked. "Diamondback." "No way! How'd it get on the boat?" "They can swim, you dummy, just like moccasins." "Where are you going? Don't leave me here like this." "I'm gonna get that axe from the canoe," Online Talbot declared. I heard him stomp toward the transom. Rising slightly, I cracked the door just enough so that Mally could see me. Her eyes got wide. So did mine. Her hair was dyed jet black, even blacker than her jeans. She looked scrawny and both arms were covered with mosquito bites. The pink bracelets I thought I'd seen weren't bracelets at all. They were raw marks made by handcuffs. One of the cuffs was now locking her by the wrist to the steering wheel of the houseboat. She opened her mouth to say something, but I signaled her to be quiet. Then I sat down slowly on the mini toilet and closed the door. Online Talbot was returning with Skink's hatchet, and I had nothing to defend myself with. The 9-iron was down in the deck hatch, where I'd stupidly left it. I heard Mally say, "Don't go in there, TC." "Hey, there's only one way to deal with a dang rattler." "But what if you get bit?" "Just shut up. I'm going to chop that thing into a million pieces." I had maybe 2 seconds to make a decision, and what I decided was this. I didn't particularly want an axe blade embedded in my forehead, so I hollered, "Stop! I'm not a snake!" Silence on the other side of the door, then murmurs of confusion. Finally, Online Talbot spoke up. "Come out of there right now, whoever you are." I did what I was told. He was poised to strike, holding the hatchet high. "Chill out, dude." I raised my hands. Mally said, "He's just a kid, TC." He lowered the hatchet, though he didn't put it down. "Who are you?" "Carson is my name," I answered. Mally shot me a look like, "Where'd you get that one?" "Carson what?" asked the fake Talbot. "Just Carson." It probably popped into my head because of Rachel Carson, the author of Silent Spring. "Can't tell you my last name," I said, "because you'll call my parents." Mally immediately synced to my act. "So you're a runaway?" "Walkaway's more like it. Let's just say I'm traveling." "How'd you get out to this boat?" demanded Online Talbot. "You didn't swim, else your clothes would be wet." "Hitched a ride with a garman." "Bull!" The bogus Talbot was several inches taller than me, as tall as my brother Robbie, only not as muscular. He wasn't ugly, and he wasn't movie star handsome. Regular looking is what he was, except for his smashed nose, all swollen and plum-colored. That explained the nasal twang. His dusty brown hair was cut short, and he hadn't shaved in days. His t-shirt was forest green, and his jeans were frayed, with his white slides were filthy. When he took off his shades, I noticed that his dark eyes seemed small and jumpy. like mouse eyes on a rabbit face. "What was the noise behind that door?" he asked. I showed him the rattlesnake rattle, which he tore off the cord around my neck and held up to the light. "This the real deal?" "For sure." "Too bad," he sneered, and he threw the rattle out the window into the water. "Seriously, dude? That was a present from my grandpa." "Get off of my boat, dork face." When Mally was cyber dating the fake Talbot, she would always brag that he was deep like a poet. I'd never met any genuine poets, but I'm pretty sure they didn't use the word dork face in everyday conversation. I turned to my cousin. "How come you chained to the wheel?" Bogus Talbot didn't like the question. Mally smiled tightly and jangled the cuffs. "Oh, it's just a fun game we play sometimes, right, TC?" "Yeah," he said gruffly. "Now give me the key, sweetie." "What?" "Come on, playtime's over," she said. "Carson can help you unload the canoe." She held out her free hand and wiggled her fingers. "Key?" Online Talbot was in a jam. He didn't want me to know he was holding Mally against her will. Then he'd be forced to lock me up, too, so that I couldn't go tell anybody. Still, he wasn't foolish enough to give the key to Mally. He skulked over to the steering console and unlocked her. "Hey, you can't stay here," he said to me. The hatchet was in his left hand. He wasn't waving it or anything, but the message was clear. "I need something to eat, that's all. Then I'll go." "TC caught a big fat catfish," my cousin said. "I'll help you guys skin it." "Awesome," said Online Talbot, again with zero enthusiasm. We walked out of the cabin toward the stern of the boat. "What's your name?" I asked Mally innocently. "Louise," she replied with a straight face. I couldn't stop staring at her tar-black hair. It made her look older and pale as a witch. "That's a sweet canoe," I remarked. "Yeah, we lucked out. It just came floating around the corner this morning." "Weird. Nobody was in it?" "Nope." "Finders keepers," said the phony Talbot. His busted nose made me wonder if the canoe really had been empty. Maybe the governor had paddled up to the houseboat and a fight had broken in. Usually, I could tell when Mally was holding something back, but it didn't look like she was. All I wanted to do was whisk her away from the kidnapper, which is what you call somebody who handcuffs a girl. A kidnapper, not a boyfriend. He was already ticked off about me being there. Some smart-ass stowaway interrupting his river cruise, but I didn't mind keeping him off balance. Criminals made mistakes when they feel some heat. That's what Detective Trullo had told me. Maybe I should have tried a different strategy with the Talbot imposter, like pretending to make friends, but I couldn't force myself to be nice to the man, not even fake nice. I waited until he put the hatchet in the waistband before asking what TC stood for. "Talbot Chalk," he replied smoothly. I went back right at him. "Dude, I don't think so. No way." "What?" He was scowling and trying to sound tough, but there was an edge of alarm in his tone. "The only Talbot Chalk I ever heard of is dead," I said. "Maybe there's one more. You ever think of that?" I shrugged. More than one guy called Talbot? Yeah, whatever." "Let it go," snapped Mally. "No problem," I said. Or as they say down south, no problemo. "I'm not letting go of nothing," snarled the imposter. "This little turd just called me a liar." All things considered, I stayed incredibly calm. "Talbot Chalk got killed in Afghanistan," I said. "He was in the Marines. They had a service down in Fort Walton Beach, and even the mayor was there. No offense, man, but if you're going to swipe somebody's name, don't pick a war hero." The kidnapper's face turned purple. "I ought to knock your dang teeth out." He took a wild swing, but I ducked. My cousin stepped between us. "Mind your own business, Carson." "Sorry, dude," I said to the phony Talbot. No reason to freak. But freaked he was.